See, it's already come up there, stop recording. So it must, when I press that, it must already turn it on. No, I haven't started. Oh. Hello, welcome to this webinar on the Personal Property Securities Register Due Diligence. I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Personal Property Securities Register Due Diligence System. Let's have a look at some of the key items that are included within ESS BIZTOOLS due diligence packages. This form gives you an overview of some of the key requirements of the personal property securities legislation. The definition of personal property is very important because it relates to all forms of property other than real estate, land and buildings and fixtures that are affixed to land. It relates to personal property and thus includes a vast range of business property. And then we have listed in this particular article some of the plant, equipment, and other assets that come under the definition of personal property. A very important point to remember when you're talking to your clients is that the Ramalpa clause that was very popular for many years no longer applies. It's no longer effective. You need more than a Ramalpa clause on a tax invoice to give protection to your clients. So that's that clause, that material, which summarizes matters relating to the key items within the Personal Property Securities Register. The next area to look at is the Procedure Control Form. This is a document that we have developed within ESS BIZTOOLS for each of our product packages. Obviously, this one is the Personal Property Securities Register Due Diligence Procedure Control Form. And what this sets out for you to utilize is the order, the process that we recommend that you approach the Personal Property Securities Register due diligence task. So first of all, there's some reading which we suggest the accountants or team members who are going to be involved in Personal Property Securities Register read. There's some articles that you might like to send to your clients to give them a better appreciation of what this is all about. And then there's work checklists, and we're going to be looking at a few of those in a moment. So the procedure control form will guide you through the process and make sure that every aspect of what your client is doing relative to the personal property securities matters has been appropriately looked at. We're now going to look at a couple of samples of forms which we have developed for you to use relative to individual types of industries. And the first one is a retail business. A retailer could have a number of different issues relating to the PPSR, including supplying goods to customers, supplying goods on a consignment basis to another business, storing goods and equipment in someone else's warehouse, shop, etc. quite frankly, anywhere in someone else's premises. And leasing of business premises, there's potential problems with plant and equipment if the business remains in the premises when the lease ends without an appropriate document being prepared. And then there's a series of questions which will guide you through that process. The key thing is, has your client had a new retention of title agreement prepared after 31st of January 2012, when this legislation first applied from? And do they have a terms of trade agreement that was also prepared after the 31st of January 2012? The next one we're going to look at is trades and contractors. Now, this one's a little bit different. It applies to a business supplying goods to customers, supplying products to customers which are added to other products within the customer's business. So something's affixed to something else. Customers may be on-selling products before paying the tradesman for the products, renting, leasing of products to customers. And the big one for trades and subcontractors is preferential payment risks. And I will highlight this. Preferential payment risk. This is a particular risk for this type of industry if they have not lodged a security interest with the PPSR. Also, their tools and equipment, vehicles, portable buildings, formwork and scaffolding stored on some third party's workplace can all be at risk if there has not been a registration made on the PPSR. So if you've got clients in this category, and I'm sure you have, then this should be something that you've got some concerns about in talking to your clients. There's been another number of trades businesses that have really been affected by not registering a customer on the Personal Property Securities Register. The next industry form that I want to show you is the livestock one. So this covers things like livestock on adjustment, other assets that are stored on someone else's property, when your client is selling livestock or hiring or leasing livestock, that's stallions for breeding purposes, to another business. In fact, there's been an infamous case in New Zealand where the owners of a stallion that was leased out for breeding purposes lost the ownership of that stallion because they had not registered it on the New Zealand equivalent of the PPSR. And there's some items there that mainly then look at the terms of trade and retention of title agreements. Have they been prepared after 2012, January? Within the ESS BIZTOOLS system, we have other industry checklists for restaurants, hospitality, wholesalers, farmers' crops, equipment renters, ingredient suppliers, paintings and works of art, manufacturers, farm suppliers, livestock feed suppliers, thoroughbred horses. That's there because of that New Zealand case I spoke about a moment ago, and construction businesses. So if you have clients in any of these categories, and I'm sure you're going to have clients in some of those categories, hopefully these checklists will assist you, if you agree to become a subscriber of the PPSR due diligence system, to undertake appropriate research to make sure your client is protected. I now want to look at some of the key areas of the PPSR due diligence system, the key components. And the first one is a summary we called implications for businesses. So this is giving you an overview of the type of material that's included that you would then badge and make available to your client as part of your overall fee for service. This legislation came about after a number of years of toing and froing within the government, between the House of Representatives and the Senate, and it involved the merger of 70 odd acts of parliament, both federal, state and territory, into one. And it's caused some headaches. And it's caused a lot of headaches for businesses, particularly small businesses, but some of the big end of town has also been very significantly affected by ignorance of this legislation. I've thought a few times how I would react if a client came in to see me tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., just as you had started work, or I'd started work, and told me that he had run into a problem under this thing called the PPSR that he probably knows very little about. And it's cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars, could even cost millions, could even cost the whole business. And yet the client had not been advised that they should have registered on this government instrumentality called the PPSR. No one would like to go through that, and therefore I really commend this particular product package to you to help you service your clients. We're now turning to the main form within the ESS BIZTOOLS product package, and that is form BAS 1645. BAS stands for Business Advisory Service, not the other BAS. So this is the index. So this is a checklist specifically developed to assist accountants to undertake a due diligence review of your clients. So you'd start off with, first of all, looking at what personal property does your business own? Is it your own premises or property? Is it in lease? Or is it someone else's property? Or is it on consignment? Now, if it's in your own property, you've got no problems. But if it's in one of these other three, you have potentially got problems. And we've broken it down so that there's no misunderstanding as to what you should be thinking about. Stock of goods, consignment stock, demonstration stock, produce, grain, etc., and other types of stock. And we've left some lines there for you to complete that. Are your premises leased? You're in someone else's premises? Are you there on consignment? The key questions to be getting answers for so that you can answer these questions. And then we have the livestock. Now we've shown livestock separate to stock because there's some more components. Livestock, and we've called it livestock and adjustment because we're assuming that there has been some sort of adjustment agreement entered into. We've shown thoroughbred horses as a separate item because of that New Zealand case. And we've also included crops because there is specific provisions within this legislation relating to crops. We then move into other goods. Goods left in someone else's possession, goods sold on your behalf by someone else, goods attached to other goods, mixed goods. And this comes about when products like grain is poured into a grain silo that is owned by someone else and mixed with other farmers' grain. Goods used for growing crops, there's specific provision for seeds, fertilizer, pest control in the legislation. And supplies and feed for livestock, and that is treated separately also. So we're utilising these forms to assist you to undertake a review of your client's affairs as of last night. Where was everything? And obviously, if it's in the client's own premises, there's nothing to worry about in this part of it. We have shown artist works as a separate item because New Zealand, who's had this legislation for about 6 or 7 years longer than Australia, had some real problems. That had a near riot in Queen Street in Auckland just after the New Zealand legislation was introduced, because a store that sold on consignment stock that had been developed by various artists had a liquidator appointed. So we've shown them separately. Again, where are they? Now, those of you who are advising superannuation funds might give some serious thought to this. Does the superannuation fund that you're a trustee of, or that you're the key advisor to the trustees, does it have paintings, carpets, sculptures, works of art that are stored in someone else's premises? Those items are not supposed to be in the business organisation that's contributing to the superannuation fund, are they? So where are they? And I suggest you give some serious thought to the Personal Property Securities Register implications if something went wrong with the landlord where those items are stored. Next group that you might like to think about is plant and equipment, tradesmen's tools, formwork, cranes. All of these types of items can also be affected, and there's been some big losses out of some of those items. Now, one thing I forgot to mention there, and I should have, is we have different types of issues when we look at lease plant. So it's leases after the 20th of May 2017. If the lease is for up to 2 years, you do not have to worry about registering it. But if the lease is for an indefinite period and it's likely to be increased beyond 2 years, you should be giving some consideration to advising clients to register on the PPSR. If the lease is for up to 2 years and automatically renewable, those assets can be lost to the owner if they're not registered on the PPSR. And if the term is for more than 2 years and they are valuable, then I think you should be recommending to your client that those leases are registered on the PPSR. There's been a couple of major changes in the timing factor to do with leases over the last few years, and that has definitely improved how this legislation operates, but you can still get caught. We have shown a separate section here for leases entered into prior to the 20th of May 2017. I think most of those are now finished, but there could still be some, I suppose. But there's some notes there about that. Motor vehicles, any asset that has a serial number stamped into the chassis or on the motor or somewhere on the asset is potentially at risk under this legislation, and therefore your client probably should be giving consideration as to whether to register these items on the PPSR. Boats and other types of watercraft are the next segment, and we've got the same types of questions. Another category is aircraft. Now, you might think at this stage, oh, none of this applies to my client. Please don't give up at this stage. There's still some very important other information. We're just working through the list to making sure that the form includes every type of asset that we can think of. And then we've got this category, other physical personal property. If there's something else. Then we come to debtors, because debtors are a very important component. You can register your customers, your debtors, on the PPSR and use that registration to be able to make a claim against a liquidator for the value of your account that hasn't been paid. And the next big area is Section O, unfair preference payment claims. This is a big area, and it's the area that a significant amount of money has been lost by subcontractors, tradie type businesses, because they have not registered on the PPSR. This relates to when they've entered into a contract with a business or a main contractor who's going to be making progress payments to them. And then a liquidator is appointed to that main contractor or the owner's business. And the liquidator then makes an allegation that unfair preference payments have been received by your client. And unless your client is able to refute that suggestion, then that money has to be repaid to the liquidator. What many subcontractors and tradies have obviously not appreciated is that they can virtually ensure that they have a watertight claim to the money they've already been paid if they have registered that customer on the PPSR. Once they tell liquidators that they have got a registration, they tend not to hear anything more from those liquidators. We've got Section P is financing. Licenses and trademarks, they're assets. And if they've been hired to another business to utilize, well, they're assets of the business that could be lost to a liquidator, administrator, or trustee in bankruptcy if they have not been registered on the PPSR. Same thing applies for intellectual property that's been hired to someone else. Someone else has got the utilization of that asset. Loans can also get caught up, including loans to associated entities. Statutory fishing rights. I haven't quite worked out how they apply, but they're obviously an asset, and the legislation makes particular mention of them. Assets held on trust by other people. This is covering the situation that I referred to a little earlier about superannuation fund assets, obviously held in the name of a trustee, but where are those assets stored? And what would be the position relating to those assets if something happened to the landlord of the building where they are stored and the liquidator was appointed and the liquidator seized those assets? There's been situations where a service entity type arrangement got into real trouble under this legislation because there had been no registration on the PPSR made by the owner of the assets. We've got any other property, and that could be rare coins, rare stamps, rare carpets. Where are they stored? So that form, BAS 1645, is the key document to assist you to undertake a detailed review of the position for your client. We're suggesting this review should take place once a year at least, and more often if there has been a person who was heavily involved in this whole aspect of PPSR has left or been moved to another job. I think it's an appropriate time for a review. Should only take 4, maybe 5 hours, although some of our subscribers have told me that they've spent 8 hours undertaking a review, but I suspect they may have been doing a few other things. And as long as the client's happy, that's great. The form I'm showing you now is a calculation form which we've included in the product package, which enables a business to think seriously about what their total exposure might be. We're not suggesting that every transaction should be registered on the PPSR. So if you're only dealing with a business on a spasmodic basis and the transaction's only a couple $100, it's probably not worth it, even though the registration fee is only $6.40 for 7 years cover. So this form will assist the business to go through and calculate what the sales might be, how long the debt might be outstanding for. And I normally think it could be around 3 months. It's worth utilizing 3 months for calculating the amount. And then the question that you should be putting to your client is, would you be financially embarrassed if you were selling $6,000 a month, the debt was sitting at $18,000, and that client was unable to pay you? Would you like to have had the opportunity legally of being able to take further action? If they don't register on the PPSR, they've got no rights left to make any recovery at all. If they are registered, all their rights are available to them. For $6.40 for a customer, not for every transaction, not for every invoice, per customer, as long as what you're selling your customer has been described wide enough to be covered on the PPSR, that's the only payment you'll be making for a year. And obviously, if your clients are federal government departments or state and territory government departments, you're probably not going to worry about it, and even local government. And they could be major public companies. Now, major public companies, unfortunately, sometimes do get into financial difficulties. So you need to weigh that up as to whether that particular customer needs to be covered on the PPSR. So that's what that form is there to assist you to do. And the other form that I now want to refer you to is for renting, leasing, or storing of assets on someone else's property. The first group is assets with serial numbers, motor vehicles, boats, aircraft, tractors, trailers, caravans, motorbikes. Where were they last night? If you're doing the review today based on the situation last night, where were they? And then look at where they were they stored? So you can have a conversation with your client. Now, if the asset's only worth $1,000, the client might say, I'm not worried if I lose that. But if the asset was worth $100,000, perhaps it should be included in the registration. Let's look at some of the problems that small, medium enterprises have had in Australia with this legislation since it started. Millions of dollars have been lost. On my reckoning, well over $400 million because of ignorance of how this legislation operates. A lot of your clients still will not understand that personal property includes virtually all of their business assets except land and buildings situated on that land. So some of the instances we've got here is a franchise operated throughout Queensland, had about 12 major stores up the Queensland coast. A liquidator was appointed. and $28 million worth of stock was seized by the liquidator because it had not been registered on the personal property securities register. The total value of stock was reported to have been around $32 million. So $4 million was paid to the owners of that stock by the liquidator. And for the benefit of his secured creditor, he got another $28 million. Some people look at me and say that can't be true. I was conducting a workshop in a city last year, and someone just looked at me and said, that can't be right. Well, unfortunately, it is right. It's what can happen under this legislation if businesses have not protected themselves. A cabinet-making business was operating in a display village. They'd equipped the kitchens in 8 or 9 display homes, upmarket display homes, worth approximately $150,000 each, the kitchens. And the business had entered into a leasing arrangement with the developer of the display home area. Unfortunately, the developer got into some difficulties. A liquidator was appointed. The liquidator seized those assets. And the liquidator then took action under the regulation relating to preferential payment claims and clawed back 6 months rental payments that had been paid. That just added salt into the wound. Cleaning equipment and product supplier ran into problems under the legislation. Truck hiring business, value of assets of $1.4 million. So there's a number of these cases that are there that have been summarised that you might care to look very closely at and then talk to your clients about it so that they have a clearer understanding of the drastic results that can accrue to a business that has not appropriately covered itself under this legislation. The next form I'm going to show you is the form whereby we look at the liquidator's claims area. So there's some notes there which will guide you through that process. So our suggestions to you on your program for a personal property securities register due diligence review is to identify the clients that are involved in the industry categories that we've specifically listed in this webinar. Ask the question, is there consignment stock located in other person's premises? Is a subcontractor or tradie receiving progress payments? These are the clients that are most vulnerable to incurring significant costs if they have not registered those customers or businesses who are holding assets on their behalf onto the personal property securities register. The system will assist you to prepare a proposal to your client. And this is the proposal form. Obviously, you can edit this template. You can develop your own. And obviously, if you're not going to do some of this work, it'd be a good idea to edit it out before you submit it to your client. But it enables you then to give a quotation, identify the key personnel, and identify how you wish to be paid. Our recommendation is what you're proposing to your clients is that you're going to review their systems and how they go about making registrations on the PPSR. How often would you undertake this review? I think at least annually. And whenever there's been someone new appointed who's going to be responsible for key work relative to this whole PPSR process. I know of an incident where the person that was responsible got the terminology mixed up, grantor and grantee, and registered with the wrong classification. And it was of no effect on the PPSR. The liquidator just ignored them. An indicative fee, to give you an idea what we believe you could charge for this type of service, is around $900 to $1,800 plus GST each time you do it. We think it's 4 to 8 hours work to undertake the review. So what's your investment to be able to get the product package which will enable you to be offering this type of service to your clients? You can subscribe to the PPSR due diligence system from ESS BIZTOOLS as a standalone product for $550 per annum, including GST. Or you could subscribe for the ESS BIZTOOLS Silver package, which includes the Personal Property Securities Registered Due Diligence System, which is currently on a special because of a 25% discount for the new financial year of $1,641.75, including GST, as compared to the normal price of $2,189. So to subscribe, please go to www.essbiztools.com.au, click onto the PPSR due diligence system, and then click on to subscribe. Or if you would like to subscribe to the ESS BIZTOOLS Silver package and get the benefit of the new financial year 25% discount, go to obviously essbiztools.com.au, click onto access levels. That's on the top of the home page. And then click on the silver level access, and then click on subscribe. Our commitment to you, we will send you a copy of this slide presentation and a link to the recording of this webinar so you can watch it at your leisure. If you've got any questions, we will respond to them promptly. And our purpose for being in business is to supply accountants with a range of business advisory services, tools, to assist you to be supplying a range of non-compliance services for your clients. So if you've got any inquiries, please don't hesitate to contact us. Send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au, or telephone me or any of my team on 1-800-232-088. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.